Greetings and welcome back to Kerbal Kombat. I'm Android with Loud and Clear, and today we declare war. The single turn ceasefire is up. Cadenza spent their turn of the ceasefire violating our airspace, which is a very Cadenzan thing of them to do, and with an armed reconnaissance aircraft, no less. So, I would say that they definitely have missed their opportunity to avoid this conflict. We are going to start this war as we mean to end it, swiftly. So, what have we actually done this turn? Well, first of all, let's actually take a look at what has happened since last turn. Jimmy, in charge of Cadenza, has deployed his defenses. He stockpiled a lot of units in one particular location, which we will take a look at later. Twitchy, in charge of Kita, has struck back at Joffman's Legion and done a pretty good job of it. Had a very interesting, large bomber that he used. Very cool. Actually also like his watercraft, but that's all unofficial, of course. My opinions do not necessarily always reflect the opinions of the Darien Republic. I can just be me and be talking about the game sometimes. It is possible for me to not be in character. So yeah, Twitchy has some really cool units. He really does. And without him, this might not have gained any traction at all. So I very much appreciate him. I appreciate all of his fans who are checking this out. We just wanted to make something that we thought y'all would really enjoy, and something that all of us have been waiting a long time to happen again. A multiplayer collaboration on this scale. So thank you very much, and we will continue onwards with Edgy, who struck back also very effectively. This is a very interesting fight we're seeing between Kita and Joffman's Legion. Just back and forth with massive sweeping attacks. Love it. Meanwhile, our turn as the Darien Republic has finally come back around, and we are going to go in full force against Cadenza. For this turn, we have spawned in 2 new Vigilance-class guided missile frigates. One at Jeb's Island Resort, and one at the KSC Island. We're essentially rounding out our defenses with these frigates. We're not going to go on the offensive navally yet, but we will see how this war goes for the first couple of turns. We may definitely begin next turn, because now our defenses are very well rounded with the addition of these 2 frigates, as well as an SPA-1 Razorback and MBT-2 Jaeger, which we have spawned in at Guardian's Basin to replace the 1st Armored Division that left there last turn. So this base now has a very comprehensive air and ground defense. It's very valuable as our northernmost territory, and I do not want to see it lost so early. We've also spawned in additional units at Koehler Crater and Black Crags. At Koehler Crater we spawned in an F8 Lancer II, and we swapped the loadout of a Scimitar, and we did the same at Black Crags. We'll be checking in on that in a moment, but finishing up what we've done for the turn, we moved the 1st Armored Division from our side of the Cadenzan border into northern Cadenza to begin their drive into Cadenzan territory. They aren't quite in, or weren't quite in range to strike a base, but we have placed them in a very good position to do so now. With that, let's get to the actual combat for this turn, which does involve the units at Koehler Crater and Black Crags. Kicking off the combat for today, we have the FA-5C Scimitar at Koehler Crater. This is a rearmed Scimitar from the one that we spawned on turn 0. We also spawned in an F8 Lancer II alongside rearming this in order to essentially replace it, because we don't know if this thing's going to go down or not. Or rather, I do now because this is post-commentary, but I didn't know at the time, so I figured leave a Lancer II there as a replacement air defense fighter, and we're going to send the Scimitar out with a ground attack package because it is the inferior fighter, essentially. The Lancer II replaced it for being better in pretty much every single way. So this is more expendable, we'll say. it was re-outfitted with cruise missiles for free. We are allowed to do that. We're allowed to change ordnance of planes when we rearm them and things of that nature. And you rearm all of your units at the start of your turn. We are taking this Scimitar to Dunderd's Edge, where Jimmy has decided to essentially mass most of his forces to defend against our 1st Armored Division rolling in from the north. This is a very valuable base being set up as it is. However, he was not quite able to get these 2 tanks close to the base. They're in load range. They're 48 kilometers, 49 kilometers away. Slightly further now because I had to move them due to issues loading them in, but that won't effectively make a difference whether we load the base in or not because of how far away they are. The base can't really help them out. If the base had a fighter, they would be able to essentially tell the fighter that they're under attack. The fighter would come over and attack us. But all that's over there is the spy plane that was in Jimmy's video. So, keeping that in mind, we're just going to try and stay out of load range of that base in order to reduce lag. So that doesn't actually end up happening. We do load the base in, so footage is going to slow down later, but it doesn't have any effect on this fight. So we are engaging these 2 tanks. We've marked their positions with GPS coordinates, and we're going to engage them with AGM-86C cruise missiles. These are very potent air-to-ground weapons. They have an extremely high explosive yield. But they cannot correct their course. Once they're fired at a GPS coordinate, that's it. They are locked in on that coordinate. And those tanks on the ground, they have smoke countermeasures which defend against laser targeting, but not against GPS targeting. So the tanks can't defeat the targeting of this cruise missile. But the targeting of the cruise missile is locked onto where they are right now. And unluckily for us, their AI pilot is on, and they moved. So that missile misses, because it was aimed at where they were, and now they're essentially just driving at this fighter. But you saw there's debris. We did do damage, although not enough to actually knock out that tank. You can see the icon in the vessel switcher. There was no change to the name. It's not listed as debris or anything like that. So we are going to have to make a couple other runs, which is why we started off by just firing 1 cruise missile, because I was not sure how effective that was going to be, and as it turns out, not that effective. We're going to have to switch to different air-to-ground weaponry in the future, at least to attack moving targets. So, might as well use the cruise missiles while we have them, so we fire another one. I try to lead, and I do not lead nearly enough because these cruise missiles are going to take many seconds to hit their targets. It's essentially impossible to try and lead these shots, but I'm trying anyways because we have the things. So those 2 missiles are going in. One of them is going to take an insanely long amount of time to reach its target because of the way that it was launched from this fighter. These missiles don't have boosters. But the other one hits and does not do any damage. It lands far too far away from its intended target. I did notice something right here, though, and it is that one of the tanks does not really appear to be moving. The one that we hit earlier, so possibly it's tracked, but the other one is still very much active. However, we are now out of cruise missiles, and so we must now engage with our Vulcan turret as the only remaining weapon on this plane. You can see there the tanks are firing their main guns at the cruise missile. Their tank cannons are set to engage anything within 8 kilometers. So they will engage us with their main tank cannons when we get within 8 kilometers. But considering how insanely fast and maneuverable this fighter is, I think a little bit of basic jinking will be enough to dodge those shots. But we will see. Going in for our first strafing run against this moving tank, it already opens up. Our Vulcan turret has a range of 2,500 meters. Within that range, the AI will begin to auto-target. It has a 90-degree firing cone, essentially, so it can fire at pretty serious angles, such as that one right there, but it can only fire forwards. We got a minor hit there. It looks like no debris. We're going to have to come back around. Really, just this took a while, so speeding this up. Just a bunch of passes and maneuvering to avoid these tank guns, which are very slowly attempting to shoot us down, and they don't score any hits on this pass. as we slowly pick apart this first tank, going in for what I figured out eventually to be probably the best tactic of going directly above the tank so that it can't engage with its tank cannon. The gun just can't elevate that high. And it looks like we've done a significant amount of damage to that tank. The gun appeared to be completely destroyed, and right there you saw we just loaded in the base, which I was trying to avoid, and it made this laggier and way more annoying to play. But regardless, we go ahead, and you can see right here the immense lag I'm dealing with at this point. We are manually disabling this second tank, making sure that all weapons on both are in fact taken out, which will not only ensure that they can't shoot at us, but will ensure that they can't be repaired next turn. If a vehicle has all of its weapons, or all of its ability to move, or all of its AI destroyed in this game, it cannot be repaired next turn. However, if all three of those things are intact, if it can move in some capacity, shoot in some capacity, and if it has its AI control, then it is allowed to be repaired next turn for free. This tank, however, is not going to be fighting ever again. But just to make sure, at the time it was kind of difficult to tell if those missile racks were empty, if the missiles had actually survived. The anti-tank missiles that these tanks have. We go in and actually land and just drive directly up to the tank. Almost losing part of our wing there. Ignore that. I'm very good at driving planes. We're just making sure that the missiles are gone. And while I was here, I just wanted to dismantle this tank a little bit and just see how close its insides were to what I expected, and they essentially are exactly what I expected. You may have noticed mine and Jimmy's tank hulls are rather similar. I'm not going to make any comment on that other than he had assistance at his request. And I am pretty much cool with that because it means that our tanks look really cool and really appropriate. So this tank is running away for whatever reason, I guess because of its minimum engagement distance, so we're going to chase after it in our fighter on the ground. And then I decided that that's a really stupid idea and I'm just going to switch to it, and yeah, it has no weapons left, so both of these tanks are disabled. It's at this point that I should have returned back to base, but I'm greedy, so I decided, hey, let's go over to the actual base and see what kind of damage we can do. This is only an expendable previous generation fighter after all. What harm could come of it? Ignore the fact that I just lost an elevator because I took off too aggressively. So we go directly at the enemy base. You may have noticed as I switched to that one ground unit, his tank destroyer, the Sniper. Interesting name choices, by the way, naming his tanks after rifles and shotguns and snipers and things of that nature. I mean, you know, it's easy to keep track of, but come on. Come up with a cool name, seriously. Obviously that's why the tanks died. But you may have noticed that Sniper had actually started moving towards us. It is several kilometers from the base because it heard the shrieking cries of help from its tank brethren and has come to assist. However, sadly, it is far too late, and it has no effective anti-air guns. It's trying to shoot us down with its 4 105mm howitzers. But it is getting assistance from the anti-air emplacement at that base, firing PAC-3s at us, extremely fast, but not very maneuverable radar anti-air missiles, and our chaff deploying there along with our ECM doing the work of extending our radar signature and forcing a miss against that missile. That is what they're called, after all. I'll pull a Jimmy joke right there. So we return, seeing that we are relatively safe from that anti-air battery, to just attempting to strafe this tank as we did with the others, which is not very exciting, but it's effective, and I play games to win, so this is what we're doing. I invite Jimmy to do the same, and try as hard as he can to win this conflict. I'm all about theatricality, but this is just the best way to attack ground units. I'm not going to, like, fly at ground level directly in front of 4 105mm howitzers to try and kill this thing. However, as effective as I might think I'm being in taking out this tank, and as good and perfectly fine and safe as I might think I am not. That anti-air battery shoots us down, because we ran out of chaff. And yeah, as not maneuverable as packs may be, they can definitely hit a plane that is very slowly strafing a tank like this. So we are torn apart and obliterated by that AAA battery. Fair play. Fair play. I got cocky, I got greedy, and that's what happens. Regardless, we did minor damage to this sniper. That's not going to have any effect because it will be able to be repaired. We go ahead and move that back to his base because I assume that he would have wanted it to stick with everything else and just not be way out here, like 10 kilometers away, not really doing much. But we did take out those two tanks, and for an older plane, I'd say that's a fair trade. We now head over to a different base of ours called Black Crags, where we have done the exact same thing that we did at Koehler Crater. We spawned in an F8 Lancer 2 to replace this Scimitar, which we have reloaded with a ground attack package. I did both of those things back-to-back before this combat, because we have to spawn all of our stuff in at the start of the turn before we do any combat. So I did all of that first, otherwise I would have changed this ground loadout, but this is what we're stuck with now. But that's fine, because this plane has a very important mission. You see, there's a few bases in Cadenza territory that are only defended by long-range anti-air missile batteries, such as the one that shot us down earlier, I know. But when that's all that's defending a base like this, it is kind of easy to take out, as we will be seeing in a moment. And so we are going to attack one of these bases that just has a very basic anti-air defense. I almost go into range of two bases simultaneously there, so we approach it from a slightly different angle. And yeah, so we are going to attack first Lake Dermal, which just has one anti-air battery, and we are going to try and eliminate that anti-air battery, hopefully without taking any damage. We'll see. I was hoping not to take damage in the last combat, but here we are. So that is his air defense. Just checking here to make sure that it loaded in correctly. We did quick save and quick load. I cut that out just for the sake of viewing. And we decide upon entering load range that we are going to speed up, not quite to afterburner speeds, but just, high cruising speed. Just maintain decent amount of controllability, and we're going to go low. We're going to go very low, because these radar missiles are very long range, yes, and they are very fast, but it doesn't matter if you can't see the plane that's attacking you. So we are going to keep all of the terrain in between us and that radar. This is, right now at least, our best tactic for combating long-range radar missiles. We're just going to stay low. We're going to get it as close as we can before we attack, because the closer we are, the less of an advantage that battery has, and the less time it has to try and drain our chaff and look for shots of opportunity against us. As we get closer, we accelerate up past Mach 1, very rapidly accelerating even further. We are extremely close at this point. I'm thinking for some reason that my cruise missiles are going to fire, even though I specifically set them up not to fire this close, because they tend to miss when they're fired this close. And it doesn't matter, because we just go ahead and strike it with the gun anyways. I'm leaving guard mode on in combat. I don't know if I mentioned that earlier, for the most part, because guard mode is extremely, extremely accurate and good at fighting, generally speaking. But this is all being piloted manually, however. I'm doing all of these maneuvers because the AI pilot is not the most effective. We dodge one pack missile right there. We did that first strafing run, but doesn't appear to have done any serious damage. We dodge another pack here. I'm trying to get further away so that we actually fire our cruise missiles. The engage range is somewhere around 5 kilometers, and there goes the first one. That's going to take a while to hit because it was fired in the opposite direction. But we are going to, now that we've turned around, tell the AI to fire another cruise missile, because this anti-air battery is going to start engaging these cruise missiles and trying to shoot them down to protect itself. We now fire a third cruise missile. It has 4 targets that it is simultaneously trying to shoot down. It almost gets a decent hit on us right there, blows off one of our verticals and all of our ailerons and flaps. But that cruise missile does hit, and it looks to have done a decent amount of damage. We go in for another gun run, and yeah, there's a lot of debris there. And there's a second cruise missile, and this is a very, very, very disabled defense platform. However, it is still not showing up as debris in the vessel switcher. We have another cruise missile on the way, I believe, if I remember correctly. And we have plenty of ammo, so we're going to strafe this thing until it no longer shows up, and there it goes. I believe I was mistaken about that cruise missile, by the way. I think all of them have hit. But yeah, so that is that defense out. This base is no longer controlled by Cadenza, but we're not going to occupy it ourselves, because this isn't the only base in the region that's only defended by an anti-air battery. There's two others very nearby, or very much nearby, that are also weakly defended by these exact same defenses. So, we're going to leave that base unoccupied. The DRC can no longer use that base to spawn units for itself. They would have to retake it in order to spawn units there. So we have dealt them a decent blow, along with just destroying the unit itself, the air defense. And we're going to move on. Even though we haven't taken the base for ourselves, we've done enough damage, I think. And we can do significantly more by continuing on to Dead Kerbal Pit. This approach is going to be even easier because, as the name would suggest, it is in essentially a pit in the middle of a mountain range, so it is very easy to approach without being detected. So we go low yet again. ECM jammer on already because there's no disadvantage to the radar site seeing the ECM interference and knowing that we're here, because it can't vector anything to intercept us. It's fine if it knows that we're here as long as it can't lock onto us. So it's seeing the ECM interference right now because ECM jammers just light up radars with interference. But that doesn't matter because it can't lock onto us because it doesn't have sight of us. Or, actually, maybe the interference is also blocked by the mountain. I'm not sure exactly how that works. Regardless, it does not see us until this moment right here as we crest the ridge in gun range and begin this strafing run with an extremely long burst from that 20mm Vulcan cannon firing high explosive rounds and lighting up that ground defense platform. That first run surely did a significant amount of damage, but obviously we are going to keep shooting until we know for a fact that we are safe and the base is ours. Yeah, it didn't really have much of a chance. Long-range air defenses can only be so effective when you sit them in the middle of a pit like this where they have no arc of fire whatsoever. Yeah. Maybe if I flew a high-altitude bomber over here it could have shot us down, but that's not what we decided to do. Regardless, we still have fuel and ammunition, and this is just a helipad base. So we are definitely just going to leave this one empty and move on to our final destination for this trip, Area 110011, which I'll probably just refer to as Area from now on. It's Area 51, but yeah, it's essentially just a massive runway in the middle of the desert. It's pretty valuable, actually. 2,500 meter runways are kind of hard to come by, especially ones that are this long in this mod. So this would be a very good base for us to hold on to. It's in the middle of enemy territory, so I don't expect us to hold it, but, you know, we could try. And all of this was essentially a very long, drawn-out raid to try and essentially cause chaos in Cadenza, which I think is a very strong opener for this war. We have loaded into area now. This terrain is slightly less useful than the terrain at the past bases that we've attacked, but we can still do good enough. One thing that is actually aiding us in these attacks is the really aggressive curvature of Kerbin. Kerbin is significantly smaller than Earth, so the curvature is much more pronounced, meaning that it's a lot easier to hide behind terrain. This will actually come into effect in naval battles as well, as we will hopefully see kind of soon. We haven't really seen any naval combat yet, but I'm hoping that that will kick off sooner rather than later. Regardless, we are now poking over the runway, over that hill, and we are already in gun range, strafing this defense, much like the last attack. But this one does not take so much damage from that initial strafing run and actually gets a shot off at us while we're right above it, in a very vulnerable position there. But we do have chaff left, we have our ECM active, so that missile misses, and we come directly down on top of that platform with a good burst, and definitely tear some stuff off of it right there, coming right back around very quickly for another quick attack, just trying to stay moving, just in case it still has its missiles operable. Just doing quick loops here rather than going around for long passes. And at this point it seems it is disabled, so we slow down, just have a very stable firing platform for the AI where we can really just tear this thing apart. And we just continue to engage it until it is no longer a threat, no longer a unit, and with many explosions, and a pause or two, it's still not quite dead. Oh man, these things are way too tough for how basic they are. It's essentially just a platform made out of structural plates with a missile launcher and a radar on it. There we go. So it is kind of robust, a lot of high HP parts there. But yes, with that we have destroyed the ground defense here. We have taken area 110011 and the massive runway that it harbors. We're going to land this slightly battle damaged, but still pretty, very much effective scimitar here. It does not have any air-to-air missiles or air-to-ground missiles. It only has the gun left, so it's not the most effective unit in the world for defending this extremely valuable base, but I would rather leave the rest of our units at home defending our home territory. So this scimitar will attempt to defend this base with the fuel and ammunition it has left, and I think it could actually pose a decent threat. But that is the offensive side of our turn effectively done at this point. 2 attacks, more than 2 attacks really, but yeah, definitely a significant amount of damage done to Cadenza, and a fantastic opener, if I do say so myself. And with that, we have struck a very decisive blow against Cadenza. Extremely good start to this war. I believe it will not be too long of a time before the Kerbals of the communist Cadenzan state will finally be able to taste freedom, under the Darien Republic, of course. There is one thing, one little thing that irks me, one thing remaining that we really, I guess, can't do anything about. Cadenza has a space program similar to ours, and just like us, they have used it to launch satellites into orbit. One satellite, specifically, as we have. And this satellite is an extreme nuisance to us. Just the fact that it's floating up there, able to do whatever it wants to do, beyond our military capabilities. While we're able to engage the Cadenzans effectively on the ground, on the sea, and in the air, we can't do anything about their spacecraft. How unfortunate. So, in keeping with the game's rules, to complement our one allowed spy satellite, we have launched our one allowed communications satellite. That is going to enhance our civilian space program, actually. This is not a military satellite at all. Nope. Anyways, in other news, it seems that the Cadenza communications satellite, which was recently launched, has ended up in a very unstable orbit around Kerbin, and surely will not survive re-entry. Or, if it does survive re-entry, definitely not impact. What an unfortunate tragedy. I'm Android with Loud and Clear, and I hope to see you next time.